Welcome to 17 Strong. Victories don't come by accident. Here's your host, Steve Teixeira.
Thanks, Andy. Welcome to another 17 Strong podcast. I'm your host, Steve Teixeira, along with my beautiful wife, Holly.
Hi.
So we're just plugging away here in Colorado.
Yes, we are.
Every minute of it.
We are.
And
Yeah.
This one
I'm
is...
a little nervous. I'm excited. I have a lot of emotions going into this one. This means the world to me.
He's like another son to us.
He really is. He really is.
So
He's
this
just part
is
of the family.
Will Dixon.
Yes.
He's
Hello.
Ryan's first college roommate.
Yes.
Yes. Dorm roommate.
Dorm roommate.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So tell us a little bit about you, because your life is fun. It's exciting.
It's a great way to put it. So I grew up, went to high school in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, so southeast Denver. And then I came up to Colorado Mesa for baseball. Got to play 4 years here. Was lucky enough that at the end of my career, I got to wear 17. Ryan was obviously my first roommate. Well, actually, he was my second roommate.
Yeah, I know. I heard about that.
But I counted as my first roommate. And ended up getting to live in your guys' house for 3 years.
Yeah.
After moving out of the dorms. There was a year in between that I lived somewhere else. And then ended up meeting my wife towards the end of my senior year. She didn't really want to talk to me until I was done with baseball, but met her and have a beautiful 2-year-old little boy named Owen.
Yes. Love him.
And then I coached for a little while after baseball was done, taught for a little while, and now I'm doing something totally different, working for General Mills. So
Good
That's
for you.
awesome.
Good for you.
I do. Yep.
So you're doing
And it
great.
should be pointed out that Owen's almost as big as he is already.
The tank, everybody. He needs to be on the podcast one of these days.
Yeah.
He is huge.
He's like as big as a 4-year-old, I think.
I don't know. He's pretty big. He's only
big.
2, and he talks all the time. He's a little parrot.
Yes,
Well,
yeah.
mom and dad are no slouches, so he is
Yes.
going to be at least 6'1", 6'2", right?
Easy.
We just hope he's good at math.
Yeah.
That's all that we care about. So.
Yes, he's awesome. So we love that. But where do we even begin,
Well,
Steve?
I know you have a lot of stories, so let's talk about when you first got to meet.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about when we met.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Holly.
Let's go right into it. Okay, so Ryan came here, and I've said this, but just to set the stage one more time, Ryan finished his chemo in January. 2 weeks after he finished chemo, he came to Colorado. So, of course, as a mom, I'm a little freaked out. It's not like a normal kid that you drop off at college, but this kid is like motivated. He is so excited. He wants to live his best life. So we go and this is where we're scheduled. And mind you, you weren't his first roommate either. He had Kyle Leahy that he was originally supposed to be with when he was coming in August. Obviously, he fought and beat cancer, and then he came in January, and we got assigned to Will Dixon. We're like, who's he? I don't know. So anyway, we go into the dorm, and I'm getting things together, and Ryan's bringing things up. And do you want to say, or do you want me to?
I can say it.
Okay, go ahead.
So I met the whole Teixeira family right after getting out of the shower, wearing nothing but a towel.
Towel. Nothing but a towel.
Just a towel and a smile, I guess is a good way to put it. So that was
I remember going, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
I think the first person I saw was Holly.
Yeah.
I think we made direct eye contact, and I was like, this is going to be really awkward for the next 6 months that I live with your son. I'm very sorry. But everybody
Yeah.
kind of filtered out except Ryan, and we
Yeah.
sat there and chit-chatted. I had a roommate the first semester. That kid decided to transfer to a different school to play. So I actually lived with my best friend from middle school. He ended up being one of my roommates as well. So I was sitting there talking with him before Ryan even showed up, and I was like, man, how cool would it be to have my own room? Not knowing the whirlwind that I was about ready to embark on
Yeah.
with your
Exactly.
son. But yeah, so after that day, I think everything was on the table between the three of us and Ryan, obviously, as well. I mean, it's pretty tough when you meet somebody for the first time just wearing a towel.
Yeah.
So
Just wearing a towel.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and I think too, in his, like, he was probably thinking too, like, he's exposed because he looks like a cancer patient. He's very bald. I was a little bit embarrassed because here he is in this world of living on his own, wanting to go to college, and, meeting his roommate and teammate for the first time.
Yep.
And he's exposed too, because he doesn't want to feel that way. He wants to be normal. He wants to be, like one of the guys. So, and I always go back to his Mav card. He really looked sick in that Mav card, and that was hard for me. Not hard for him. Not hard for him at all. So he was, wanting to live his best life. So that was the introduction of us. And yeah, and pretty much like I said in the previous podcast, that he cut ties with Steve and I like that day. That day. Like you're done. You got to go, and I was like, okay, wow. It was, he wanted to be with you. He wanted to be with the team. He wanted to do whatever the team was doing. And we kind of respected that, but it was a little odd. It was a little odd. So tell us how that day or that week kind of panned out, because I think you guys had some team dinners. You had some, of course, you're just getting to know this kid.
Right. That week was crazy. It's that first week that we come back as a baseball team before the season starts. And so we're doing, up to 3 quote unquote practices a day. That might be a team meeting, a workout session, and then out on the field. So we're all pretty tired throughout the whole, day. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. So then Ryan coming in right at that time, I think we had started a day before Ryan showed up. I think we had one day before, or I might have been just a day early. So I just remember the first person I talked to was Garrett. When I found out, I didn't find out Ryan was going to be my roommate until like a day before I showed up on campus.
Oh.
So I still thought that I was going to be in a single dorm by myself. I was like, this is sweet. And then I found out through Garrett telling me, oh, Ryan's going to live with you. And I didn't really know Garrett at that time either. Again, I had made it through one fall. I didn't really know everybody on the team. You're the freshman, so
Yep.
nobody really talks to you. But Garrett started talking to me about Ryan, and I started to learn more and more about Ryan, who he was, where he was coming from, all that. And then, like I said, I met you guys wearing nothing but a towel, and
Nothing but a
and
towel.
I think that vulnerability probably just got me and Ryan right on page with we're good. Everything's out in the open. This is how we're living.
Yeah,
So
this is how we
the next 6 months, this is going to be us.
Yeah.
So that first week was a lot of conversations, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, so where did you come from? Just small talk. But right away, I realized very fast, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
This is a different feeling. This is a different conversation that I'm having than with anybody that I've had, on the baseball team or in previous relationships. We connected right away, and it was like after the first night, he told me the first night, he said, "Good night, love you." And I remember just sitting there going, that was weird. Love you too, and we just went to bed, and it was all good and whatever. But I remember that was something that after that, we just were close. Obviously, he still had his best friend on the team. So
Sure.
there was some of that where he would go over and hang out with Garrett. He would go to Garrett's dorm. He would go, he knew Ben, he knew Garrett. He hung out with those guys as well, which I didn't really. In fact, I didn't until after my sophomore year. I didn't really hang out with any of those guys. But whenever he would come back, we would sit there, we would talk, we'd have hour-long conversations. We had a TV in the dorm, but we never used it, anything like that. So, I mean, right away, like I said, I could tell that there was something different in meeting Ryan that first week.
It was something deeper. It was more intimate. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys were really getting to know each other.
Right.
It was a brotherhood that was forming right there.
Absolutely.
You guys talked about a lot of stuff together.
A lot of stuff. Yes, we had a lot of conversations. We had a lot of late night talks.
Probably times when you didn't want to talk.
A lot of times when I didn't want to talk. I remember there was a few times I played a little bit my first couple of weeks of the season, and then I ended up tearing my hamstring like really bad. I tore it off the bone. It was a really bad hamstring tear. I mean, I was bruised from middle of the back down to my calf.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I came in that day after I thought I had earned a starting role. I thought I had worked towards that. And I just remember being, I mean, a mopey puppy dog. and I was back in the room. I was, slamming doors. I was all this. And I just remember the conversation that I had with Ryan. He basically told me, shut up, and it wasn't a conversation that I normally would have with a teammate. Normally teammates have your back and, oh, it'll be okay. You'll figure it out. And with him, it was more, who cares? We won today. So why are you worried about it? And again, that there, not knowing it at the time, but looking back on it, that was a monumental point in my life looking back, going, did I have a character change there? Did something happen there that changed the course of my college career? So
Right.
Can't talk.
You can't talk right now.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I knew this was going to happen, but I have so many things. Okay, there was something that you guys would I can't remember what it is, but you guys would do something before bed, and it had something to do with music. Okay, so explain that to me, or
so
explain to everybody.
well, what we would do is, again, we had a TV in the room. I had a GameCube. So there was times where maybe that would be happening, but for the most part, I feel like Ryan didn't do great with silence. You know, he wasn't great with just sitting there, which was something that I was okay with. But Ryan would pull that right out of me, and he would basically, what we would do is we would listen to music and we would try to show somebody a new song. So you would have, your library of music, whatever it was, and you'd play the song and we'd give each other like 30 seconds worth of a clip. And it was a little competitive game. There was nothing on the line, but we would go back and forth and say, who sings this song? What's the song title? And we would go back and forth. And, Ryan's music and my music were fairly similar, but also very different. I heard like 38 new George Strait songs that I've never heard before. I heard all sorts of old country that I'd really never heard before. And Ryan would win a lot of those games. But towards the end, I had to start putting Shazam on my phone so I could try to Shazam songs because I was tired of losing. But that was what we would do. And it was a way that, if we were done studying or if we were, just sitting there, it was a way to just have something that we could do together. And it kind of brought us to know each other a little bit more. When I'm playing some of the songs that I listened to in high school and Ryan's looking at me like, what the heck is this? It just shows the cultural difference that we grew up with and that kind of stuff. And it allowed us to bond over something that was very minor, but it was also very important.
And how did that evolve? Just again, he didn't want the room to be quiet.
I genuinely think it was, we were probably sitting there one night and didn't have anything else to talk about. Or it might have been like an awkward conversation that we had just had, and then it was just awkward silence. And Ryan, hey, have you ever heard this song?
Oh,
And so it was like, oh
One of
yeah, that's whatever it was.
gotcha. So then it just
And then it just kind of turned into this competitive. I'm gonna find a song that you've never heard before.
Gotcha.
And so we would do that for hours.
Hours, yeah.
There was a few nights where I was like, Ryan, I know that I have to practice in the morning and you don't, and I really need to go to bed, man. But it was like, oh, 5 more songs, or whatever it was. And you could tell he had 5 songs that he was just waiting to put out there. So, but yeah, so that was kind of how, and that was pretty early on. I would say that the first month or two, we would do that quite a bit. And then towards the end of the year, we would do it every once in a while. But by that time, we had plenty of things that we could talk about and share and life stories that maybe hadn't come up when we weren't as comfortable with each other, but
Right.
now getting to the
And-
point that we were.
At what point did he ever share his story, his cancer journey, anything like that?
Before the towel came off my body, he was pretty much telling me his story.
Oh,
I know that you guys had left and then come back. In that time that you had left, when I was trying to put my clothes on, he was out in the open. Let's talk about this.
This is who I am.
And that first night, he made me touch his scar. He was showing me everything.
Wow. Well, we did that a lot.
Yeah.
that's hilarious. So he wanted you to touch it.
He wanted me to know. And I think it was also his way of just like, let's get this out there so that we don't have to
Talk about it.
talk
or
about it
figure
anymore.
out.
Or if I have something that I need to talk to you about, you at least have some context rather than just me saying something.
Gotcha.
You know, I mean, our dorm room wasn't much bigger than the area that we're sitting in right
Yeah.
now. I mean, we were
Yeah.
close quarters.
Very close.
So there was plenty of interactions that were going to be close and intimate. So I think him getting that out of the way right away was great for both of us. You
Yeah.
know, I obviously had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But I obviously wasn't going to say anything until they got brought up.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was very open and transparent in ask me whatever you want. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And yeah, he pretty much would tell you whatever you wanted to know.
There wasn't anything that was a closed book about Ryan.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
So you guys bonded not only with baseball, but hunting and fishing and all that kind of stuff. What we've heard one version of a fishing story, but I'm sure you have several versions of a fishing story.
Yeah. You know, we didn't have class every morning. And we made sure that we made the most out of most of our mornings. If we didn't have morning weights, if we didn't have anything to do that was like super important, like an 8 a.m. English class in my sense, but we would go out and we'd fish. And I'd never fished for bass. All I'd ever done was trout fishing, really, growing up. And so Ryan kind of taught me how to bass fish, truly. And so we would go out, and I remember the first bass that I ever caught, Ryan was like, "Hey, you need to throw this jig right there. If you throw it right there, you'll catch a fish." And, you know, I was like, he's smart at it, you know. So I flipped one out there, and it happened
Wow.
right away. I mean, that jig hit the bottom, 1, 2, fish on, first bass that I ever caught.
Wow.
And I remember thinking that day, I was like, man, I kind of want to throw you in the lake right now, you know, because he was just laughing, because I was obviously giving him a hard time. Like, there's no way that that'll happen. There's not a fish there, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
I mean, immediately it happened.
Oh, that's so crazy.
And then there's obviously the fishing story with Zach McLeod, you know, that we had a homeless guy that I can't remember if it was Zach's stuff or if it was, I believe it was Ryan's stuff. I believe it was his yellow bait caster that was taken. And I remember wanting to fight the guy. I was ready to go after him.
Well, that did line up with Zach's story.
Yeah. And I was ready to fight. It was going to be, you know, one of those deals. You know, I was at the time, 19, filled with testosterone, ready to go with anything. So, but I just remember the way that Ryan talked to that man, saying, you know, if you wanted to learn how to fish, I'd teach you how to fish. If you wanted to, and it was very parental, I guess, in a sense. And he was trying to teach the guy that this is wrong. And, you know, at the end of it, I'm sitting there going, I'm still red-faced, ready to fight. And I'm trying to comprehend what just happened, what I just witnessed. I'm like, wait a second, we're not doing anything. We're giving him a stern talking to. You know, I was like, wow, Holly and Steve must really have him on.
No, our listeners need to understand you, because that's your lane. That's
so
your wheelhouse.
funny. Yes.
You know, I'm sure your mother and father could tell stories, and, and you're just, your whole childhood, you're kicking and fighting. I mean, that's Will.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
But
so funny. You're like, wait, we're not fighting him? Okay, we're just gonna talk to this homeless guy.
Okay, this is interesting. Yeah. But we
Mm.
also had a fishing story up at my cabin in Leadville. And I think that was when Ryan impacted my dad's life more than anything. My dad obviously had known Ryan, that he was living with me. He had never really hung out with him.
Right.
But we went up to the cabin. The team was on a travel weekend. And I just remember looking at Ryan going, man, we got to do something, because there wasn't anybody to stay home with us. There was no practice for the guys that were staying home. I was still injured. Obviously, Ryan was redshirting. Right. And so I got Espen with us as well, my best friend from back home. And we all went up to my cabin, and, you know, my dad was smart enough to go, you're not all going up there by yourself, so I'll be there as well. And there's some private ponds that you can fish, but it was still frozen over. I believe it was late March or early April. So we went and we fished, and we didn't catch anything. But it was probably the most fun I've had up there, outside of when I asked my wife to marry me, of course. But we just had this unbelievable weekend, and we didn't catch a single fish. But on the last day, of course, Ryan got a bite when nobody else could. And, you know, we got close. We never ended up catching the fish. But we just fished for, probably 14, 15 hours.
Wow.
And it was just me, Espen, and Ryan. And getting to go up there and share that with him. He was asking about every little nook and cranny where the deer were. He was planning out his deer hunts, all that.
Yeah.
So that was probably the fishing memory when I look back the most. That's the one that I remember. The one story is great. It's funny, but going up there and getting to share that with him, that's such a
Yeah.
special place to me and my family.
Yeah.
And I know that it's very special for
How
my
did it
dad as well.
impact your dad?
I just think getting around Ryan, I think that was the first time that he actually got to see what Ryan was. He'd obviously heard stories from me and that kind of stuff, but it was never weird. Espen's like a brother to me,
Mm.
right? And my dad is like a second dad to him. It's very similar to Garrett and Ryan, right?
Yeah.
They both met in middle school.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They were
Yep.
best friends ever since, and
Yeah.
that they always were going. So that was Espen for me. So Espen being up there, he can talk to my dad, like a son can.
Yeah.
And Ryan immediately was just right in the mix.
Mm.
There was no awkward conversations. He was asking my dad all sorts of questions, and it was just this like awesome experience for everybody. And I know that it impacted my dad quite a bit. I know that he's talked about it in the past to me and other things like that, but just how influential that weekend truly was for him
Wow.
and for us.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I got to know your dad fairly well. I mean, we went to your cabin, go hunt with your dad, and got the tour and everything. And I have so much respect for your dad. I mean, he
Mm.
was here as much as he could be to watch you play baseball, and your mom as well. But your family is spread out throughout. Well, I think they've all gotten closer now. But at the
A little
time while
bit,
you
yeah.
were going to school here, I think there was one in California. There was, I mean,
Yeah.
they were
One
spread
in
out
Michigan,
everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah. So your family's amazing, and I
Mm.
really have a lot of respect and love for your family.
Yeah.
So
Love that.
that's great.
That's
So
awesome.
take us into. Did you do Challengers? Were you part of the Challenger
Yeah.
team to
No,
go?
he didn't.
You didn't
What
go.
happened?
So there was one spot available, and I wanted to go,
Oh.
but I knew that Ryan should.
Oh.
So I didn't take the final spot. There was a little bit of a time where Hanks was asking who wanted to go, and I think it was 12 guys got to go, and we were at 11. And I knew Ryan wanted to go.
Yeah.
I knew that that was something that was going to be very important to him, and I think I just said, I'm good.
Oh. Wow.
And it also conflicted a little bit with some stuff where I just was like, it's not worth me trying to make this work and then having to back out last second.
Sure.
So it wasn't just obviously that I wanted Ryan to go, but I knew that there was going to be a little bit of conflict if 13 of us were trying to go.
Oh. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
I didn't get the opportunity to go on that. I wish I would have.
Right.
I really do, because I've heard so many amazing stories from that week. But it also gave a week to everybody else that never got to be living with Ryan to go get that experience.
Right.
So in hindsight, it was probably great that I didn't go on that trip.
Interesting.
What?
Interesting.
So when he got back, he wasn't feeling good, but he was still working out on the field. Did he share anything with you when he got back?
When we came back that year, things were obviously different. We weren't living together. Or actually, I'm going to pull it back a little bit.
Okay.
The last night that we stayed together, I think Ryan was heading home. I was still technically with the active roster. There's 25 active players. We have 27 in the dugout. So I was one of the two that wasn't active, but in case an injury happened, I would then become active for the World Series. So I had to stay. Everybody else was leaving. And I remember we were sitting in the parking lot, and we were just listening to music. It was me, Espen, and Ryan, the three of us that were in the dorm. And we just sat there and we talked all night. And I knew that I wasn't playing in the morning. I knew that I wasn't going to suit out or anything. So whatever, I was going to enjoy the final night with Ryan, that we were going to live together. And then we both knew where we were living the next year, and it wasn't together. So after that night, we stayed up, probably till 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I think Ryan ended up driving home after that. So I didn't tell you guys that part of it, but I went to the field. I think Ryan stopped by, and then he took off to go play summer ball. And I just remember that interaction was like one of those special times that you get to look back on, not realizing how important significantly that was to our relationship. You know, we were sitting in the parking lot, not doing anything crazy. Cops ended up showing up. We weren't doing anything bad, but they thought we were somebody else. So they rolled up on us kind of hot. And I just remember Ryan talked to the officers like, you know, everything was good. And by the end of it, those 3 officers were asking us questions, asking Ryan questions, and just had this awesome encounter. Whereas, you know, if it was me and Espen, we'd probably have been running the other way, even though we weren't doing anything too bad.
Hooked and booked.
Yeah, we would have been running, and we'd have been, you know, blotter in the morning. But I just remember like those interactions. And then coming back in the spring or in the fall, you know, I was living with Zach McLeod, who you guys just talked to, JJ Carr, and a couple other guys. And I just remember we didn't talk that much. You know, we'd see each other on the field, but it was just like teammates. You know, if you're not living with a guy, you're not talking to him all the time. And I just remember, I remember the Striders Day. Like it's burned into my memory. And in fact, when I was coaching, it's something that I would tell the kids. It's a story that I would tell kids because it really shows. I remember we were running next to each other. The last practice that he was at when he collapsed during the Striders, and then he walked to finish them. And I just remember going like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And you know, the trainers came out, and then he was pushing the trainers off, going, "I'm finishing the Striders. You know, I'm finishing this," and walking. I think it was like 12 Striders that we had, which Striders are down and back in under a minute. And I remember that he fell down around 6, and he walked while we all cleaned up the field, and he finished. And I just remember how powerful that moment was down the road when everybody found out, obviously, that he had been diagnosed with leukemia, and how powerful that was for that 2017 team, and how much we all looked back on that moment going, if he can do that, we can do anything. There's never a time where we have to, you know, feel like this is too tough, because it's never as tough as what Ryan was going through. Obviously, at that moment, I mean, it's 95 degrees. He has leukemia, and he finished the workout. And so I think that, you know, that impacted every one of those guys in such a profound way that it was burned into our brains of, I can do anything. Nothing is that hard. So that was really the only time that me and him had that interaction. I mean, it was fairly early in the fall. But I just remember how powerful that was.
And then when you did find out, when Coach Hanks told the team that he had leukemia and was headed back for treatment, what was your reaction?
My reaction was, well, he'll just beat it and be back next year. My reaction was, okay, so he's going to beat it just like he did Ewing sarcoma. And my reaction right away was like, you know, I know who Ryan is. I know what he's capable of, and there's no problem here. Obviously, I was scared. Obviously, I was like, come on, give him a break. Because I believe during the summer he tore his UCL, and then comes back and obviously gets leukemia, and it was just like, why can he not catch the break? Like, I want to play with him. I wanted to share the field with him. You know, he wanted to play third base. I wanted to play first base. You know, we would stay up all night talking about how cool that would be. You know, being the corner infielders our junior, senior year, and knowing that we had the potential to do that.
Absolutely.
And so we, you know, it was a weird feeling, but it was also a feeling of he's going to be fine. And so I remember we all went to the hospital right before you guys went back to UCLA. And I still have that picture on my phone, but it's really hard to look at.
Sure.
Because we all look positive. We all look uplifting. We all look like Ryan's got this. You know, and even
you're all doing the math.
All doing the math. And even Ryan, he looks healthy. You know, I remember him coming in, you know, looking sick, and then towards the end of the year, you know, we're sitting there that picture that we have together where we're both rocking mustaches
Mm-hmm.
because he was so pumped that he finally started to get some facial hair back,
Facial hair.
And
Yeah.
so, when we were all at the hospital, I knew that everybody looked happy. Everybody felt like Ryan was going to be fine.
Yeah.
And there's the picture of him where everybody's throwing up the math and we're all talking to each other. We're all, everybody left there in good spirits.
Right.
Not knowing what the next 6 months were going to look like. And so I think then that was kind of how everybody was feeling, was like, he beat it once, he's going to do it again.
That was a pretty special time you guys had in the hospital. That was, I mean, all the coaches and parents and friends were kicked out. It was left between just him and his boys.
Yeah.
And I don't want to know what was said because that's between Ryan and you guys and will be for eternity. But how did that, whatever was said, and how did that impact you?
I think that team, it just, I don't know that we were a family as a team yet. It was still early in the season. We hadn't bonded yet. And all of a sudden the next day, or really once we left, it was one team.
Yeah.
One common goal. There was no other egos that really came into play. Everybody was a family. Because you have to be.
Yep.
When something like that happens, I remember just the feeling that we all had the next practice. How hard we wanted to push, how hard we wanted to work. And everything that went with that. So yeah.
Yeah.
So you and Garrett had a conversation.
Yeah, I lived with Garrett obviously my junior and senior year. So his senior year, and then once he was done the year after. So Garrett wore 17 for 2 years. Obviously, when Ryan passed away, he was wearing 17, and then his senior year he wore 17 as part of the 17 Strong Scholarship.
Yeah.
And I would always talk to him about that. It was something that we had common ground on. Everybody knew Ryan on the team. I lived with Ryan.
Right.
Garrett was Ryan's best friend. And Garrett and I, truthfully, when I moved in, we weren't close. But we got there. Obviously, because we both had a little bit, Garrett obviously had more of a connection to Ryan than I did, but we both had a very, great connection with Ryan. And so I just remember talking to him about like what it meant to wear that number, what it meant to him, and trying to, this was my senior year when I was asking him more of these questions. And, the way that he would talk about it, it wasn't going to be the same for me, but there was something that he told me where he said, we owe it to him. And that really stuck with me. And I just remember how hard I knew that I needed to work so I could get there.
Right.
To have the best possible season that I could, not for me, not even for my team, but for Ryan, and how important that was. And I'll lighten the mood up a little bit, but Coach Hanks told me when I got 17, he said, you're going to have to lose some weight so that you can get into 17, the cream, because they ordered it for Garrett, which was kind of
incentive.
There was an incentive there of like, I have to get into a place of the best shape that I can be in so that I can wear the number and honor my friend.
Right.
And Garrett had an unbelievable senior year. I mean, he was our best player that year. He carried the team as far as he possibly could have. And so I knew that there was big shoes to fill there. And then also there was unfillable shoes wearing 17 for Ryan. So I just remember, I worked really hard, but then at the start of the year, I wasn't playing great. I was playing third base, I was playing first base, and I really wasn't playing good at all. I think I ended up hitting like 180 on the year. I turned into a spot starter at both positions. And I remember it kind of hit me when it was happening. It was like, you didn't work this hard and you're not giving up. We go back to that Strider day. There's no way that I can give up because this is easy compared to what Ryan went through. And that's kind of when the pitching career took off. And then, what happened there, that was kind of all history. So,
You had some moments that you shared with me, and I don't know if you remember them, and I don't remember the stories completely, but it was almost like Ryan was there talking to you.
oh, yeah.
Is there anything you remember that you want to share?
So, the last game that I played in was my first ever career start pitching. And I just remembered before the game going, I've got to get it as far as I can. And so I knew that I kind of had to change my pitching style from being a closer to being a starter, trying to get as many pitches as I could out of my arm. Um, and I remember there was actually, if you look back at that game, there was 2 calls that ended up getting reversed. Um, and both times they would have scored a run. And if you look back, at least from what I've been told, I still can't really go back and look at any of that game. But if you go back, one of them, the guy was clearly safe, and the umpires called him out. And Coach Hanks challenged both of them. And what ended up happening was we got to the 8th inning, and I was kind of out of it at that point. I was just focused on I've got to get to the dugout, get as much liquid in me as possible, get back out on the field,
Yep.
throw as few pitches as possible, and continue this game.
And this is in Cary.
This is in Cary.
Yeah.
Yep. And so around the 8th inning, I started to feel my body was like, this is about your breaking point here. You haven't done this since you were in high school. And I remember getting to that point going, no, I've got more. And I got into trouble in the 8th inning. It might have been the 9th inning. I can't remember exactly which one, but Hanks came out and somebody was warming up in the bullpen. I don't remember who it was. And I just remember going, no, I can't leave it here. I've got more. And I remember telling Hanks, I'm staying in, I've got this. And he walked off. And there was a moment of, in the movies when everything goes silent, that happened. And I just remember hearing, you've got this. And that was very powerful because it was Ryan. And sorry. He was right there with me.
Yeah, Holly and I were fortunate to be at that game.
I was there.
Yeah. And it was a powerful game.
Yeah.
It was a powerful game. And that's the game that sent you guys to the next game.
Yep.
And that, what a team that was,
Oh,
boy.
gosh.
Yep.
What a team. And you guys ended up losing to the team that actually won it all.
We lost in the national championship
in the
game.
national championship
Yep.
game. But you guys gave it your all. But I'll never forget that. I mean, there was tears in the stands. There was, we were with your folks and we were watching that. And I mean, it was just, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, wow.
What did you have to add to that?
No, I think just listening to you and hearing the bond that you guys had, such an early time, and such a pivotal time in your life, where you guys are both very vulnerable coming into a freshman year and to right off the bat just tell each other like, I love you, I got your back. It sounds like that you guys were both an impact. It changed your life in the direction that it was going. And you knew that Ryan was special at that
Yep.
moment. How would you, if I want to ask you, how would you describe Ryan's personality or just him as a person? In your words, how would you describe him?
So I think that this is it's something that's almost impossible to say in my own words. It's something that you had to feel. You guys felt it.
Yeah.
Clearly I felt it. My whole team felt it. And so, I've thought about, a little behind the scenes here. I knew that this kind of question was coming. I went with persistent.
Yeah.
And I think that, explains Ryan as he was, when I knew him, when he was part of the team. I mean, clearly he's still part of the team. But persistence, the best way that I can describe him. but I think that influential is just as important, and it's not. The reason that we're sitting here today is because it was Ryan's idea for 17 Strong.
Right.
It wasn't just your guys' idea after
No.
the fact. This was Ryan's thing. And he was so impactful on so many people. And, it's spread across, the Central Coast,
Yeah.
Grand Junction, really the whole country.
Yep.
I shared the story with you earlier of just the funny things that people find in Oregon or
Yeah.
wherever it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, we lived together for 6 months, right?
Yep.
There's a reason why my son's middle name, though, is Ryan.
Right.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
What an impact. What an impact.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you?
Yeah.
you got
Yes.
something
We
you got-
have to talk about when he wore 17 and what, I mean,
What did that mean to you?
you told me something. I wasn't going to go here. I asked you a question and you said to me, I hated wearing that number. It hurts so bad. But I can look back now and know.
Yeah.
I didn't ever want you to hate the number.
I didn't hate the number. I hated the fact that I was the one wearing it. I think that that's the way to look at it. I hated that it wasn't Ryan wearing it. It was supposed to be his senior year wearing that number. So I'd look in my locker on game days and it'd be like, that's not mine. But that's also probably why I was able to put together the season that me and my teammates did.
Absolutely.
Right.
100%.
Because it wasn't for the name on the front, it wasn't for the number on the back, it was for Ryan.
Yeah.
And so I think when I said I hated it, I obviously don't hate the number. I love Ryan. I love 17. I love 17 Strong. I love
Right.
Fort. I hated the fact that it was me that was putting it on. And that was
I loved the fact that it was you.
Yeah.
Because you and Ryan, there's no one that shared those moments
Yeah.
other than you. And I want you to know how special that is. That is so special. And Garrett is, they loved each other and they had moments, but never that moment. And that was super special because the minute that somebody says dorm roommate, I can say, Will Dixon,
Yeah.
Will Dixon. And that was meant to happen that way. And that was, it was just an appointment that, to change your life. And I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know, but I know that it changed your heart. It changed the whole direction of your life.
100%.
Because he was that kind of person. He
Yeah.
was that kind of person. And I just think that was just who he was. Yeah. And yeah, I wanted to make sure that you knew that I got it. I got it. It just took me a little bit longer to get there and understanding it. But yeah,
Wow.
I know.
What
This
an
is
amazing time.
Oh, one more question.
Oh, here
I'm
we
so sorry. I'm so sorry. Did he ever talk to you about 17 Strong?
Oh yeah. I mean he kind of laid the groundwork for it when we would talk in the dorm room. Talking about why is it that I can't go on a trip? Why is it that my battle is different than somebody that's a year younger than me? I don't know that he ever said this is what we're going to do, but there was definitely those questions of why is it different for me? Why is it different for everybody that's in my shoes
Yep.
to go through this battle with no light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
so to speak? So, I don't remember exactly him ever saying like, this is what we're going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. But there was definitely that groundwork starting to be built. And him talking about what 17 Strong ended up becoming.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's neat to see it.
It sure is.
And what what his legacy is it's just it's growing and it's we're changing lives. And I can honestly say that now that, lives are being changed because of Ryan's vision through 17 Strong, and it's an amazing, and it keeps growing. So
It does.
yeah.
It
I
does.
love that. But
Well, Will, thank you so much. I know you were nervous about this, but you did
I
great.
was more nervous because I knew like he has a lot more, but
Yeah,
he's
but those stories are for offline.
yeah.
So we love you.
We love you
You're like
so
a son to us, and thank you for sharing part of our life.
Love you guys too. Thank you so much for having me.
With that, we will wrap up another 17 Strong podcast. Remember, attitude is everything.
You've been listening to 17 Strong. Victories don't come by accident. To be part of the show, make a donation, or request more information, go to 17strong.org. That's SEVENTEEN strong.org.